Welcome, fantasy managers, to the FPL deadline stream from Fantasy Football Scout for Gameweek 29. I am FPL Inzaghi, and I'm very excited to be joined by Seb. Seb, how are you doing today?
Hello, mate. I'm not too bad, thank you. I'm not too bad. A little bit sleepy, but I've got lots and lots of coffee to help combat that. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm at the opposite end of my day, so it's almost bedtime for me. No coffee, unfortunately, but no, it's great to have you with us. It's great to see so many people in the chat as well. Say g'day or hello. G'day, I am from Australia, so give me a little g'day in the chat to let me know that you're here and what we're going to do for the next 20 minutes before deadline. We're going to run through our teams. So Seb is going to reveal his team. We're going to talk about the transfers that he's made, transfers being plural. There may or may not be a hit or two flying around on the stream. We might even have a live transfer as well. We'll see how we go.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll reveal my team as well. And then just prior to deadline, we will have a few minutes of Q&A where any burning questions that you've got, let us know in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them before the deadline. So yeah, Game Week 29 has arrived. Seb, how are you feeling about Game Week 29? You feeling confident?
Yeah, all right. I mean, I'm in the middle of four chips in a row, I think. Wildcard, free hit, bench boost, and then probably triple captain. Well, it's on at the moment, so unless I change it in the next 20 minutes. So I guess I should feel all right because I've set my team up for this period. It's gone, like everyone has, it's gone pretty well. Some people got very unfortunate last week, I think, but generally people who wildcarded in 26 probably have the team they want, as opposed to people who triple captain who had the points they want, I guess. So yeah, I should feel decent about it. My team looks like everyone else is on Twitter at the moment, although I don't have Kane, which I'm very, very envious of people with Harry Kane.
Yeah, that's been such an interesting debate this week. Harry Kane versus Son versus Kulusevski. The Spurs assets have risen right to the top. They, have been causing a lot of debate on Twitter and online. And we might see a certain Harry Kane in one of our teams a little bit later on. But let's just jump straight into your team. So we've got your team up on screen at the moment. This is your team after making two transfers ahead of Game Week 29. Why don't you run us through your team and the transfers that you've made?
Sure. So I have Dubravka in goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold at the back with Kieran Tierney and Doherty. Doherty being one of those transfers came in for Reece James, which seemed relatively straightforward. We know Reece James is out. I'm attracted to Doherty as everyone is because he went and pulled the other week. I do think Reguilon could be a good shout too. I'd argue with Sessegnon out, he might even be more nailed. But for me, I need some money in the bank, which I'll explain in a moment as well. So even if Doherty only plays one of those matches, it was probably still the choice I would make. And we are seeing he's got some good upside, right? Probably not as good as the last couple of weeks. That's some crazy numbers, but he's not going to regress to zero or anything. I then have Salah in midfield, who currently has the triple captain. I don't have Harry Kane, so if I'm going to triple captain someone this week, it's going to be Mo Salah. I have Son as vice captain, Saka, Rafinha, and Kulusevski. He's my other transfer, who I brought in for Coutinho. I'm sure we can cover the Rafinha and Coutinho thing in a moment, but I chose to keep Rafinha, lost Coutinho for Kulusevski. And then I have Lacazette and Brozier up front. On the bench, I have Foster, Jimenez, Kilman, and Luka Dean. And what I might do, unless 11 o'clock comes around and I miss it, is Kilman to Robertson for a -4 and start Robertson, which would mean Brozier benched. The thinking is that Brozier, if he starts and obviously scores, Robertson will struggle to outscore him with the 4-point deficit taken into account. But I'm suspicious that Brozier won't start. If I started Jimenez instead, I'm not, I think he'll start, but I'm not confident maybe he'll score today. And I wonder if in that case, I'm better having Robertson, especially seeing as I would then hold Robertson for the longer term. Kilman obviously is a game week 30 player, but I don't know if he's going to play in game week 30. So I'm not too worried about swapping a maybe for 30 for a definitely no for 30. So I'm going to keep thinking about that as we chat and as people in the chat want to shout at me and tell me what I should do there.
Yeah, that's a good point with Kilman. Bruno Lage did come out and say that he was rotated due to rest, but how much truth is there in that? Willy Bolly played fairly well. Wolves kept a clean sheet, and Kilman didn't cover himself in glory in that Crystal Palace match. So, yeah, I think his position in that side could be under threat. And I like the Robertson shout. What's your plan just quickly for game week 30? Because obviously Robertson doubles in 29, but he doesn't play in 30.
Yeah, so at the moment, I think I would have, off the top of my head, 9 for 30. Obviously with a transfer. I don't have a goalkeeper for 30 and I'm not too stressed about that. I've got the money in the bank to bring in, say, Sarr if I wanted. Couldn't do Ramsdale because I've got 3 Arsenal. But going over the rest of the season, I'm happy with Dubravka and Foster. It gives me some money aside. If Sarr concedes, which we know their defense isn't as good as it's been earlier in the season, or as the performances suggested, I'm probably happy to hope Sarr gets 2, not make that transfer and leave it. So then I would probably do something further at the back, say I've got Luca Dean, so that's all right, maybe up front. But I'd be happy going in with 8 or 9 as long as it's a good 8 or 9. I don't have Harry Kane, which is the one I'd love. But as with the way my team's set up, I've got Son, Kulusevski, and Doherty. I didn't want to lose Son for Kane. I know some people have done that, but I basically think you're trading roughly the same amount of points for each other. So it seems an unnecessary use of a transfer. And I get, if you're on wildcard, yeah, definitely get Kane. Try and get Kane and Son. And if it fits your team, if you're desperate for Kane, if you want to triple captain or something, fine. But for what I wanted to do, it just made more sense to forgo him, have Son, Kulusevski, Doherty, say Lacazette up front.
Yeah, good stuff. And people in the chat, please let us know if you hear any team news as well for the Brighton Liverpool game. Rahul points out in the chat that there might be some news around Broja potentially being benched for Southampton. A few of the Southampton fans are suggesting that his place in that starting side might be under threat. So that might even give you further justification for that Robbo transfer.
I would do that. I literally have my finger on it. I would do that.
You're going to do it right now.
Robertson is starting. I would do it if he doesn't start. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And you mentioned before about Kulusevski. He's come into the team for Coutinho. And yes. Rafinha has stayed in the team. What's your thinking there?
So I was chatting to Az on Twitter about this. So I think Az is wildcarded, hasn't he? And I mean, he's doing brilliantly. So far from me to question his decisions. But I think he's probably kept Coutinho on wildcard and lost Rafinha. I don't think there's much in it. Like, for the record, I don't think this is a Bernardo situation where I was basically saying, don't get Bernardo. Coutinho's great. He has got 50% of his returns against Leeds. Obviously, the change in formation, we think, has helped him. Although he managed to get some returns against Leeds and Man United before that change in formation. And the change in formation happened against Brighton as well, where he didn't get any returns. Small sample, though, so hard to say. But realistically, the question for me is, yeah, Leeds looked terrible the other night and Rafinha looked completely uninvolved. But if I just need to basically hold either of them until Gameweek 30, and then I would lose whichever one I had anyway, probably, would I rather have Rafinha, who's got Norwich at home and Wolves away, or Coutinho, who's got, I think, West Ham at home and Arsenal away? I think Rafinha just about edges it. Now, sure, he could get rotated. Marsh could swing the changes, but I think he's as likely as anyone to get rotated, and he's our best player. So he's probably safer than most. Bielsa, we know, benched him, but it's a new manager now. And so while I wouldn't blame anyone for holding Coutinho, by all means, it's close. For me, Coutinho to Kulusevski made more sense if it's effectively just for the next 2 weeks in mind. And then the last thing it also did is put about 1.5 million in my bank, which means I can do, even if I do Kilman to Robertson, I can do Luca Dean to Reece James in a couple of weeks with about 0.1 spare. So that was my reasoning. And I think if you're on wildcard, I probably would get Rafinha, but if you're not, it's close enough.
Yeah, I like that justification because it's not simply just Rafinha versus Coutinho. There's a price difference there. There are different fixtures, and it depends on your team how long you want to hold these players for. And as you've just said, for you, it's probably only 2 more game weeks before you're looking to move them on. One final thing I wanted to touch on before we look at my team. Triple captaincy, it's on Salah. Are you certain that your triple captain will remain active?
No, but I mean, we'll just keep talking until I forget and it's too late. Yeah. I guess really, so obviously I didn't triple captain when he scored his 80 odd points, but I wildcarded that week and I think that was a net benefit for my own team personally. I'm well set up. I've had some pretty decent weeks from that. But hey, yeah, that was the best triple captain opportunity we might ever have. And I was going to take it until things changed. But that leaves me with the chip left and Salah doubling this week. They're not as good fixtures, but I don't think they're terrible, especially, it's Mo Salah. Harry Kane is a lot of people's options this week, and I'd argue his fixtures are maybe slightly better. But I don't have Harry Kane, so that's not an option. And interestingly, I wouldn't triple captain Son, which maybe belies when I was saying, Son and Kane are much of a muchness. But if I wouldn't triple captain Son, maybe I don't believe that. So that's an interesting thing. The only other option would, I guess, be 33 and 36 with those doubles. Interestingly, Harry Kane has the same fixtures as Salah, but in reverse in 33. And then in 36, there's a bunch of good options, say even a Man City option. But I think the FA Cup finals, semi-finals take place that weekend. There's also Champions League around that time. We don't know what situations in the table will be like.
Yeah.
For me, I'd rather use it when I know, which is now.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. It's the context behind the game weeks. Guys, let's smash a like on the stream. We've got almost 300 people watching, but only 28 likes. So give the stream a like. We'll head over and have a look at my team now. So I've got quite a similar team to you with a few subtle differences. So I've got Ramsdale in goals. I've got Dan Burn, the hero Dan Burn, who got a cheeky assist for me last game week in defence. I got him on wildcard in 26, knowing that he had the double-double. I've got Doherty in defence. He has come in for Reece James. Trent Alexander-Arnold at the back, like everyone else. I've got Saka, Rafinha, Salah, Son. So 4 out of my 5 midfielders are the same as yours, Seb. But I've got Anthony Gordon in there, would you believe? He's come in for Coutinho. Now, Gordon in for Coutinho doesn't look great at face value, but it has allowed me to get Harry Kane in for Raul Jimenez. And I've got Kane and Lacazette up front. So I love the fact that I've got Kane. I wanted Kane mostly because I think game week 30, he's the most outstanding captain. And I wanted to have Kane as my captain. And moving forward, there are quite a few fixtures that Spurs have at home. They're likely to double as well, either 33 or 36. So I wanted Kane in place. And if I was going to take a hit to get Kane, I'd rather do it in a double game week rather than in game week 30 when I think the average score could be quite low. So I brought Harry Kane in for Jimenez. The justification behind Gordon is because he's got a double game week at this game week. Everton at home are a different team. And then they've got 4 games to rearrange between 30 and 38. So Everton will have a lot more double game weeks to come. He seems to be Frank Lampard's pet, if you like, the Mason Mount at Everton. He's on all set pieces. He leads the team for shots in the box and penalty box touches, as well as minutes per expected goal involvement. So Gordon is looking good. At 4.5, I'm not expecting a miracle, but the funds and kind of the value of Gordon allows me to bring in Harry Kane. And I like the look of that team. It is for a -8, so I've taken a -8 all up. What are your thoughts on this team, Seb?
I mean, I like it. As I've said, I'm pretty envious of Harry Kane. Your reasoning for 30 is good. Obviously, I guess I'll captain Heung-min Son. If I could have got to Harry Kane, I probably would have done it without losing Son, of course, which I don't believe you've done. I think the optimal trio is Doherty, Son, Kane, probably, with, price and points taken into consideration. And Gordon, I mean, I enjoy your reasoning there. It makes a lot of sense. I think a few people on Wildcard have probably used him. The one thing I'd obviously keep an eye on is with, say, Damari Gray back and a few other players, do we think he keeps his place? But you make a really good point for, if he's Lampard's favourite, if he's going to go and try and promote his career, then yeah, maybe so. What do you reckon? Do you think he's nailed or do you not need him to be nailed?
Yeah, I don't think he's nailed. I think right now his place in that team is secure. The press conference after the Spurs game was quite interesting. Lampard basically chastised every single player in his team except for Gordon. And so I think
that press conference was a hard watch.
Yeah, well, it depends on which side of the fence you sit.
True.
But yeah, look, seeing someone in pain is never fun, or sometimes. But anyway, Gordon, I think he's secure for now. I think he starts both in double game week 29. Everton fans seem to suggest that his place is safe and Damari Gray might threaten either Calvert-Lewin or he might kind of restructure his midfield in order to accommodate Gordon. I'm not claiming to be an expert on Everton, but at 4.5, I know I get the double out of him in 29. And moving forward, if he's not nailed, I haven't invested that much in him. So, like you say, I don't need him to be nailed, but I think he's good value and I think he starts both in 29. So that's my thinking there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And the triple captain on Salah, I think I'm the same as you. Understanding the context right now is important. Liverpool are gunning for the Premier League. They're not, interrupted by Champions League or whatever at the moment. So, I'm happy to put the triple captaincy on Salah this game week. All right, good stuff. So we might just head back and answer some of the questions in the chat. So Seb, I might fire some questions at you, and we've got 5 minutes until deadline. So if you haven't locked in your moves, go ahead and do so now. Seb, have you locked in the Robertson move?
I have just made the Robertson move. So
Oh,
my team is now got Robertson starting, Brozier and Jimenez on the bench.
I love that. And Jimenez in front of Brozier? Who's starting that day?
I think I have Brozier ahead of Jimenez. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Basically, just from I guess a bench point of view, I don't know, a bit of a toss of a coin, right? If I think Jimenez is safer to start, but if either of them play, I think Brozier is more likely to score a goal. Given I think it's unlikely that I actually need anyone on my bench because all of my team double apart from Rafinha now, so it seems real unlikely I'm going to need those minutes. I guess I'd rather have the one that might score a goal, given a few minutes off the bench.
Yeah, sure. A few people have been talking about whether to start Broja or Jimenez. Do you have any thoughts around that? Would you play Broja over Jimenez?
I was starting Brozier, but I'll be honest, I haven't even fact checked it, so please do this if you're thinking the same. But if Southampton fans think Brozier may get benched, I would start Jimenez because I think he'll start. But he carries not that much threat at the moment. I did have Brozier starting myself because if you're confident he's going to play, I do think he has the better threat and he has the better fixture. Realistically, it's a bit of a toss-up. And that's probably one of the reasons I was attracted to Robertson. Because if I'm torn between those two, maybe it's an easy out for my brain just to go, well, I don't have to decide. I'll just get someone else.
Yeah, for sure. That decision has been made for you with the Robertson transfer. Do you like Robertson this week? I mean, if you've got Reece James and you're thinking about replacing him, would you go for Robertson over a Spurs defender?
Yeah, so I think because Robertson obviously doubles this week, but then doesn't play next week. Spurs double this week and play next week. So it's 3 fixtures versus 2. We probably think Robertson is safer, although I'd imagine we'll see Simicast start in half an hour and be very sad. And maybe it depends on the rest of your team. If you need that player for 30, you probably go for a Spurs player, even if, you may only get 30 minutes out of them one match. But if you can afford to carry that slot, or you just, really want to look at Robertson going forward for that, say, Chelsea plus Alexander-Arnold plus Robertson plus maybe a Spurs defender in the future, I don't think it's a bad move at all. It's a move I might have made myself a couple of weeks ago that ended up going in a different direction with Reece James.
Yeah, right. We've had a super chat as well from Varun. He's asked, would you keep Rafinha or bring in Kulusevski? I'm assuming it's for free. And play one of Ramsdale or Dubravka. I think if it's Rafinha to Kulusevski for free, I'd make that move. And I would start Ramsdale over Dubravka. Do you agree?
Yep. Agreed with both of those.
And Simon, another super chat. They keep rolling in. Would you do Watkins to Lacazette for a hit? Watkins would be in my starting 11 if I keep him.
That's a big price difference. So I guess I'm wondering what else you do with the funds. On the surface of it, yes, because you're buying a fixture and arguably buying some better fixtures with a striker who, has little goal threat, but is rolling in the assists. But because of that price difference, I'd wonder if you're foregoing, Reece James in a couple of weeks or something like that. So I would just check what's going to happen with that money.
Yeah, that's a good point. If spending that extra money in Lacazette doesn't prevent you from getting in a Reece James a little bit later on, then I don't mind that transfer. I think you're getting a few extra fixtures out of Lacazette. So, and the fixtures beyond 30 for Aston Villa aren't great either. So, yeah, I don't.
Oh yeah, I was always getting rid of my Villa players post 30. So again, the Coutinho Rafinha debate. That's why I was kind of happy to do it now, because even if Coutinho goes nuts today, hey, I'll look stupid and I'll admit it, but I would have lost him anyway. So it's not a long-term horizon thing.
That's what I'm scared about, Coutinho. So we're on the countdown for deadline. We are less than 45 seconds to go. So guys, make sure that you've got your teams locked in. I've just double checked mine and I saw the triple captaincy was on Dan Burn. So no, I'm just kidding.
Oh really?
I'm kidding. Can you imagine? You
got me. I was willing that. I was willing that to happen. Mate, if he goes and scores like a brace from headers now, you're going to be like, oh no, I definitely kept it there.
Yeah, I've been stung by one of those late, FPL server shutdowns. Did you get burnt by that in Gameweek 19 or 20, whatever it was?
No, I didn't. I missed a few deadlines over, I think it was just after Christmas, just through being busy with other things and whatnot. But it kind of worked in my favor. There was never anything that caught me out. And with that one where it sort of broke with the last half hour, I think I'd already made my changes. Although that was the same time that we were getting loads of cancelled fixtures. So it was basically, you couldn't make your transfer the day before.
Yeah.
And you couldn't make it half an hour before. So as long as you were around about an hour before the deadline, you were sweet. Otherwise, you were all in trouble. So...
yeah, what a time to be alive where you couldn't make your transfers too early, but you couldn't make it too late. Otherwise, the servers would crash.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is deadline. Happy deadline to you, Seb.
And to you, my friend, I wish you all the luck in the world, but slightly less than me.
That's always the way, isn't it? Well, our teams are quite similar. I think if the key differences will be Kane versus Kulusevski, and then I think you've got Robbo.
When you put it like that, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, but it changes very quickly. It turns into a Robbo versus a Dan Burn type of debate, and I think there might be one extra difference. I've got Gordon, and I'm not sure who your other difference would
Do you still have Rafina, my friend?
be. Yeah,
Saka.
yeah. So our
Cool.
our midfielders are the same except for Kulusevski and Gordon, and then
Okay.
goalkeepers slightly different. But
Yep.
yeah, happy deadline to everyone in the chat as well. I hope that you've got your teams locked in and they're looking good. Please stick around. We're not going anywhere. We're going to stay on the stream until past when the team news drops for the first game. Please let us know in the chat if you hear any early team news for the Brighton versus Liverpool game, because there has been a little bit of a COVID scare in the camp. Twitter is up to it again, spotting training pictures, and Van Dijk's not there, Seb.
Oh, I was going to say, I'd imagine if you were just like, oh, by the way, I saw that Robertson doesn't start, so unlucky, mate.
that didn't come into your thinking at all, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I saw those. It's always, I guess they have to come from somewhere, but I feel like Twitter's success rate with people starting and not is probably not far off 50%. There's a few accounts you might trust more than others. Realistically, Van Dijk not being fit certainly harms the defensive prospects. I don't know if it harms it enough. Maybe I expect a clean sheet versus Brighton, and I expect Van Dijk not to make the difference versus Arsenal, whether they're going to keep one or not. I really like John Matip. As long as he's fit, I'd argue their defense is still good enough. And what I really want from Robertson is attacking returns, isn't it? So,
Yeah, do you think Luis Diaz has actually increased Robertson's attacking output?
Interesting question. I know him and Mane used to link up pretty well. So,
Yeah.
honestly, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to have a look into that, but I've not. So I'm not going to guess. What do you reckon?
Yeah, like just from the eye test. I mean, I haven't looked into the stats either, but Luis Diaz is a left footer, I believe, and I was kind of thinking that he would start occupying more space out wide, which is the space that Robbo would like to run into. But he seems to cut inside quite a bit and drag that defender in. I feel like I've seen, since Diaz has come into the team, I feel like I've seen Robertson way more advanced with more space on the left than what it seemed to be in the first half of the season with Mane there. And yeah, I'm interested to look into the stats like you and to see whether there has been any tangible difference in Robertson's attacking output that could be correlated to Diaz's role in the team.
I know, so for the first 2/3 or a half of the season, Trent Alexander-Arnold was far on above Robertson in terms of both attacking returns and the underlying stats to precede those returns. Of course, we know Trent's wonderful, but Robbo was down on his usual. I think a few Liverpool fans were commenting he wasn't playing his best either early in the season. He's picked up a load recently. Ted, I think, has pointed that out on here in the past. Whether that's related to Diaz or whether it's just a natural, cadence of a player going through form and coming out of form. The interesting one is maybe the midfield three as opposed to Luis Diaz. I wonder how much that impacts it, because I know this probably is less the case now because Liverpool have evolved. Trent's become a better player. But when Trent first really was a thing, you always wanted, maybe more for Liverpool than Trent himself, you wanted Jordan Henderson to start, because Jordan Henderson would start on that right of the midfield three. And he would drop in to the space Trent would leave as Trent went forward, which protected Liverpool from getting countered too badly. And then for us, from an FPL perspective, gave Trent the freedom to go and play that game, cross, get in a good position without having to think over his shoulder all the time. So I wonder if there's a similar story on the left. Trying to think, what we had Harvey Elliott earlier in the season was on the right, and that was allowing Trent to really get forward, even come inside, wasn't it? I wonder if there's similar things on the left, with whether it's Naby Keita, Thiago, Fabinho obviously plays in the centre, Jordan Henderson himself. So I'd look at that as well if I was looking, not just Luis Diaz.
Yeah, that's a really good point for sure. I like watching Liverpool play, even as a Manchester United fan. I love how attacking they are and their high line. We talk about it all the time, but it just makes for entertaining, high-tempo football. Speaking of high-tempo football, you are a Leeds fan. This game against Norwich feels like a six-pointer when it comes to the relegation battle. I feel like psychologically Norwich are down, but Leeds aren't there yet. So what are your thoughts on that as a Leeds fan?
I don't think Norwich can save themselves. I mean, hey, I hope they do, as long as it's not at our expense. But even if they beat us, I don't think they can save themselves. But from our point of view, before even a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at Norwich and Watford and obviously wasn't worried. I thought they were both down and I wasn't worried that they would leapfrog us. It was more about, competing with Burnley a while ago, Newcastle, Everton, those teams for that final spot. Now you look at the table, and even though, like I say, I think Norwich are down, there's not that many points between us and them, which shows how poor we've been results-wise. I'd like to think we can beat them. I think if Bielsa was still in charge, I'd be very confident we'd beat them. Not because I don't think Jesse Marsch can't, but just because obviously his style and the way we would have really attacked that game certainly suited us to overpowering a poorer, there's only a few sides that are poorer than us in the league, and I think Norwich are one of them. So I'm less confident than I was. Obviously, the Aston Villa result doesn't help that. But I would back us, maybe because I have to. And I kept Rafinha, right? I do think on paper, from an FPL perspective, that is a good fixture. So I have to carry that logic into, my Leeds United fan brain as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've talked all season about Norwich's vulnerabilities at the back, but specifically on that left side, and that's the space that Rafinha is going to occupy. So it feels like a great fixture, not just for Leeds, but for Rafinha in particular. But it is an interesting relegation battle this season, because I think there's probably 3 or 4 teams that could get sucked into that. We've got Everton, Brentford, Leeds, Burnley are there. Newcastle seem to be climbing out of the relegation zone now, and
yeah, I think they're probably okay now, aren't they?
I think they're okay, yeah. And it's been so interesting. I think Eddie Howe won Manager of the Month. I would not have put money on that when he signed.
No, I was probably firmly on the page of he's not a great manager. Yeah. Like, I really enjoyed him at Bournemouth, but a lot of that came out of, the promotion came out of spending a bit of money, but it always does. Every team that gets promoted from the Championship generally spends the most on wages, just like the people who win the Premier League. But then when they're in the Premier League, good attacking stuff. We enjoyed Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser, but very bad at the back. And if you looked at what Newcastle needed, you thought maybe he was the wrong person. But turns out Eddie Howe knows more about management than I do. So
who would have thought? Yeah. Even being involved in Football Manager, I know that you've used to work in Football Manager. Just coming back to your team for a moment, one of the good things, I guess, about FPL is that we're perpetually looking forward, right? So if you had a bad game week, it's okay, because the next game week is just on the horizon. I want to talk about game week 30. This is your team for 29. It's locked in. It's good to go. However, one caveat, you've put Broja on the bench and Kilman has been transferred out and Robbo in. So that's the only difference here. But a few people have talked about a Salah hokey cokey to get to 10 or 11 players in game week 30. Some people who don't have Son were thinking about Salah to Son, but obviously you've got Son there. Have you thought about the Salah hokey cokey? And maybe not for yourself, but what are your thoughts on that strategy generally?
I've done it in the past to good effect, so I'm a big fan of it. Like, obviously Salah's a very, very attractive option. We'll captain him more often than not, especially at the moment. And yeah, he should pretty much be in your team. But I forget when it was earlier this season. It might have been for Bruno or Son. I did rotate him over a couple of fixtures. Might have been over, maybe, was it just before Christmas? I think it was an opportunity to do that. And then the end of last season, I lost Salah. Oh, I did badly last year. That was like 120k, so maybe that doesn't matter. But I lost Salah when he wasn't playing that well, fortunately, for like a Son or a Bruno again. It didn't cross my mind this time, but maybe that's only because I wasn't one of the people who had that Salah to Son back to Salah again option. Because I already had Son, what am I doing? Am I doing it to like a Leicester midfielder or something like that? Not quite as attractive.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't feel that easy to justify when you're losing Salah for a Maddison, even though I like Maddison. If you're doing Salah to Son, then it feels more palatable. But Salah to like a mid-price midfielder just doesn't really sit right with me. But I do see the idea behind it, particularly as Salah goes away for the not African Cup of Nations, I should say, the World Cup qualifiers, I believe, the international break before game week 31. And Liverpool-Watford is the early kickoff in 31. So there's every chance that the managers who do the Salah hokey cokey and don't have him for 30, sell him for 30. By the time game week 31 comes around, they might get some early team news that says, hey, Salah's on the bench or Salah's being rested today post the international break. And you could get away with holding Salah with not having Salah rather for 30, 31, and then he plays City in 32. I mean, we saw what he did last time at Anfield, but yeah, I mean, it could be a really viable strategy for more than just the one game week.
Yeah. I mean, I firmly believe that you could win FPL without ever owning Salah. It just means that all of the rest of your decisions have to be that little bit better. Salah feels like not that there aren't decisions to make, but it just feels easier when it comes to, say, who am I going to captain, or even selection, right? Obviously, Salah always plays and he's often the captain, especially this season. It just feels like a very easy decision. If you didn't have Salah, you could definitely outscore the rest of us, but that decision of who to captain just feels like it's that little bit harder, which maybe isn't a bad thing, because we've seen Salah not return as many points apart from the triple captain over the last few weeks. But as part of it, talking about not having him longer term, I wonder if it's, 99% effective ownership and all that most weeks. It's just easier too, right? And then focus your decisions elsewhere.
Yeah, that's right. There was a manager a few seasons ago who he's an Everton fan, and he won the Fantasy Premier League. But
it was the season Liverpool won the league, right?
I'm not sure. No, I think it was even a few years before that where...
Oh, okay.
I think we're going back like 8 or 10 years ago now. And back when Manchester United were actually a good team.
Sorry. Was it Suarez Sturridge? I know there was like...
It was around that time,
yeah.
But he's an Everton fan, and so his rule is to never own a Liverpool player. And he won the Fantasy Premier League. And he had this rule, and obviously since Salah's arrived and Klopp's arrived, like you say, you could probably win FPL without ever owning Salah, but you'd still have to have Trent, and you'd probably still have to have Robbo, or you'd have to have double or triple Liverpool elsewhere, and then you'd have to nail every other decision. So it seems impossible now, but there was a time, Seb, where you could win FPL without ever owning a Liverpool player. There you go.
I mean, it gives you some freedom, right? If you don't have Salah, you've obviously got a lot more budget. Not that seems to be too much of an issue most this season. And I guess then we're speaking about the hokey cokey, you'd probably go De Bruyne, Fernandes, Son, you just mix them around as appropriate. It gives you a lot more freedom. I think that's the thing, though. Like I said, you just have to get more decisions right. Because, if you've not got Salah, you need to, when most people are captaining him, you need to match him most weeks, which you can absolutely do. But if everyone else is just going, it's Salah 9 times out of 10, you've got to make 9 individual really good calls on captains, which I know is, in theory, exactly the same as choosing to captain Salah. But it just feels like a larger cognitive effort to do so. And I think there's a greater likelihood that you'll slip up. And then, obviously, effective ownership will bite you.
There we go. Florin in the chat, I'm not sure if this is confirmed, but Florin is saying that it was Ben Crabtree, Mastermind said it's Ben Crabtree, the person who won, and he believes that he won when Leicester won the league. So if that's true, what incredible kind of, coming together of two things there where you've got, it's all like poetic justice, I guess you could say. The one time in a million years that Leicester win the league is the one time in a million years someone wins FPL without a Liverpool player. And we're getting some team rumours come through.
Oh no!
In the chat,
don't do it to me.
We're not going to get too invested in team rumours. We've had our hearts broken before, but as with any pre-deadline, the leaks start to come through. You mentioned there, Seb, about getting decisions right. What decisions do you think you've got right so far this season? And I don't mean specific game weeks, for instance, getting player X in this game week, but we're talking more general. So captaincy, transfers, benching decisions, when to jump on, when to jump off a player, those types of decisions. What decisions do you think you've gotten right this season, and what decisions do you think that you've gotten wrong or struggled to get right so far this season?
That's a really interesting question, especially seeing as it's not just individual players, because there's a lot of luck involved with individual players, and I've been on the receiving end of plenty of luck. Coutinho, Reece James captain recently, for example. I guess the biggest difference, I think, between this season and last for me, so I'm like 7k or something now, and last year I finished about 130 or something, has probably been captain calls. And sure, it's Salah most of the time, but this season we've had those weeks where I captained Cancelo when he got his highest score of the season, which, again, plenty of luck there, right? I think one of his assists was super lucky, and he scored a wonder goal. So, there's plenty of luck involved in that. I captained Reece James recently. What were the other ones? I captained Bowen over Antonio.
Yeah.
So most of those I felt like I've fallen on the right side of. A bunch of that obviously comes down to 50-50 luck, but it adds up, especially if you get lucky a few times. Having those players in the first place is important, and then captaining them. So I feel like I've done a better job of that, even if it just comes down to luck. And then I would say dealing with the COVID situation, I wildcarded basically a week before we had all those initial cancellations. So I wildcarded in to get like Ronaldo and various other people, and then instantly had all those matches taken off me, and basically had to take a -12 to fix it. So I feels like I wasted my wildcard, but I would say the response to that, changing strategy, taking the hits to fix the team, and then wildcarding in 26, which had been the plan for a long, long time. Sorry, hadn't been the plan for a long time. It'd been a little bit later because obviously triple captain Salah. But then when that was it that Friday when we all found about the fixture changes and people were deciding what to do, I went with the wild card. Now, of course, right now, because we're in the middle of it and played 4 chips in a row, of course I should be doing well. And I fully expect to fall back when other people play their wild cards this week, and especially people who play them in 31 plus.
Yeah.
But I feel like that strategy has been better compared to last season. Other than that, I'm not sure, but I think it's very easy to confirmation bias yourself here, right? Like the captain thing. It's easy to go, oh, I made good captain calls. Realistically, I owned both Antonio and Bowen. I captained Reece James with 3 minutes to go. Like, is that skill, or is that just a little bit of, serendipity as well? So I don't know. It's easy to think you're a lot cleverer than you are when things go your way. What about you?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, interesting thoughts. I guess, so you're in the top 5K, is that right? Or top 10K?
Oh, no, just outside. I think I'm 7 something.
Okay.
But like I say, I fully expect to be, if I'm 15K in a couple of weeks, I'll be happy because I've gone wildcard, free hit, bench boost, and now I've triple captained. People who have those chips left should absolutely catch me up. So if I'm still in the top 20, I'll be happy enough.
Yeah, right. And how many chips do you have left?
I have just the free hit now because I've played triple captain.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's one more chip than I've got left. So I'm chipless now. Yeah, no, interesting. I think, so for me, I've had a really shocking first half of the season. So in game week 16, I was ranked 1.1 million. So that's how bad we're talking. But now I'm 140K, 145K, something like that.
Oh, that's an amazing rise.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
in just over 10 game weeks to go from 1.1 to 145, I think I am all around about that, 145K. I'm quite happy with that. But it kind of came down to some really poor transfer decisions. But I think on the whole, my transfer decisions this season have been quite poor. One that stands out in my mind was early on, I went for the Lukaku-Ronaldo double up.
Yeah.
And I held on to Bamford. Remember how he got his ankle injury and he was pictured, I think, visiting a school or something a few days later. And I thought, oh, he's visiting a school, like he'll be okay. Put a bit of ice on it. I know the ricer process, like he should be sweet. But he was out for a long, long time and he's only just coming back. So that was part of a -8. And it was around about the time other managers were playing their wild card or were about to. And I've gone Lukaku, Ronaldo, bang. And they've gone wildcard, Reece James, Ben Chilwell, Cancelo. And that was when Reece James and Cancelo, and Chilwell as well, just went crazy. And so I found myself dropping down the rankings. And when you start sliding like that, you try and catch up straight away with transfers that aren't kind of well planned and thought out. They're more reactive than proactive. And I kind of went away from the normal process that I like to implement with transfers. I think with FPL, we can be so subjective and so emotional that which is fun sometimes, but I think the most optimal way for me anyway is to identify a process that has an objective value and stick as much as I can to that process. Because over a long season, repeating a successful process is going to be more successful than getting lucky every now and then. So I went away from that and I've only just started to come back to it. I don't know if I followed that this game week, to be honest with you. But on the whole, I think I've rectified that. So yeah, I think my transfers have kind of been a decision that I've gotten wrong so far. But then like you, I think captaincy, I've seemed to get right. I was on the right side of the Bowen Antonio. I went Salah over Havertz earlier in the season, and that was an intentional Salah captaincy. and recently I got the Reece James captaincy. Would have been nice to have Coutinho, but yeah, I think maybe that's us saying that captaincy's been a little bit easier this season with Salah being on fire. But yeah.
I mean, your point about trying to remain objective is excellent. There's a phrase from like trading markets, which is if you're enjoying trading, you're doing it wrong. Like it shouldn't be fun. You should have a plan. You should execute your plan, and it should be incredibly boring when it works because it's what you expected. Obviously, FPL, there's a bit more random in there, and it's FPL, right? It should be a bit of fun. But realistically, which is silly to say, right? We're all taking -12s every week. We're triple captaining. Right now, it kind of is fun. But a normal season of FPL should probably be quite boring. You should log in, make your transfer, log out, execute your plan, respond to news as it happens. And you probably shouldn't enjoy it all that much, which sounds very, very silly. But I was thinking the other day, like when people say is FPL fun, I wonder if it's never fun, just sometimes you're filled with hope. And there's kind of a difference there. Because when is FPL fun? It's not like, say, playing FIFA or something where you can lose but have fun because you're doing flicks and tricks and scoring nice goals. In FPL, you basically have fun if you do well, but you don't have to enjoy doing well. It's just success. So where does the fun come in? You see people taking big hits and captaining random players.
Yeah.
They enjoy that before it goes wrong. And I feel like that's the hope. I feel like, triple captaining, I don't know, Ryan Fraser or something last week.
Yeah.
It's fun before it happens. And of course it's fun when it comes off because maybe you don't boast about it, but you get to revel in that decision. But I wonder if none of that is actually fun as in enjoyment and just sort of that thrill of taking a gamble and hoping it comes off.
Yeah, I think that's true. We do say that FPL is fun, but the only fun part of it really, I mean, we're talking about the actual game. The community is fun, and that's that's a different part. But the actual game is only really fun when you see that green arrow and the players that you've got score points. Apart from that, it's just hope. It's the beginning of a new season as a Leeds or United fan thinking this is our year. And you just think that way every single week until you realise that it's not and you start again.
My dad used to say there's only ever one set of fans at the end of the season that are happy. And those are the ones that win the title. All of the rest are either disappointed or maybe relieved. And sometimes even the people who win the title are relieved. Like our City fans actually that happy when they win the title. I hope they are. But it's expected, right? So if they didn't win the title, they'd be pretty upset. When they do win the title, they're like, cool, I'm happy, but that's what we were meant to do.
Yeah.
Realistically, West Ham fans last year? People who just survived relegation? Leeds fans, I suppose, because we had a good season, but there were some big defeats in there as well. There's not that many sets of fans who were ever very happy. Maybe that's where FPL comes in, right? It definitely adds a bit of enjoyment to football that I wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, completely. As a United fan, I'm old enough to remember the Sir Alex Ferguson years where it felt like what it probably does for Man City right now. Every year you're very likely to win the Premier League. Liverpool will have something to say about that, of course. But it did feel like that a little bit towards the end. When United won the Premier League, it was like, that's good. I'm not elated. I'm not stoked about that. I'm more happy that Liverpool finished 5th and outside the top 4 or something. So, yeah, you kind of look for those joys elsewhere. Yeah.
So much of football is taking enjoyment from other people's
pain,
unenjoyment, isn't it? It's like, I mean, you look at football Twitter. FPL Twitter is a bit better, but you look at football Twitter. It's so rarely like, yay, my team, and normally just, yeah, but your team. It's like, okay, thanks. I mean, right. To use our clubs as an example, right? You've smashed us several times now because, well, you're better than us and you were able to take us apart. But when that happened, it was like, okay, but why are you that happy about beating a team that might get relegated? Exactly. It's like, yeah, but you suck, you're getting relegated. It's like, I know. How's it going for you? It's like, it doesn't matter, we beat you. It's like, okay, cool.
I think I saw your tweet where you said something like, if Manchester United fans are judging their success against us, then they've got it completely wrong. And that's so true. I like playing...
Not bitter at all, I promise.
Yeah. But we need to start looking at ourselves in comparison to teams like City and Liverpool rather than Leeds, of course. Talking about FPL and the almost rhythmic or robotic nature of FPL, we've seen increasingly this season algorithms and points prediction tools and things come in. FPL Review have kind of gone through a bit of a redevelopment recently. The Fantasy Football Scout website as well continues to go through some great redevelopment to kind of keep up to date with the pace that the algorithm is moving at and these developments in kind of computerized fantasy sports and fantasy Premier League. You said before about how FPL could be, should be, whatever, logging into your team, making a transfer, logging out, and the algorithm would help people to do that. I know on Twitter that there's I can't remember his name now. You might have seen it on Twitter recently. There's a guy who has 2 teams, and at the beginning of the season, he set up a team to follow FPL review and to only make a transfer that FPL review suggested every single game week. And that team is in the top 1K now. So that team is on fire, playing the chips when the algorithm is suggesting to play the chips. I'm not saying that's going to happen for everyone, but what are your thoughts on the algorithm in FPL and how that might change things moving forward? Because it's here now and it's here to stay.
I'm a big fan of it. It's just another tool to use, right? You still get some human autonomy over it, whether that is the inputs, because it's not an algorithm that goes and decides the parameters on what is worth what. A human still does that, so you still have to trust the inputs to then allow it to crunch the numbers and give you the output. And then when it comes to the outputs as well, you still get to make a value judgment on that. It's just another piece of information to take into mind. It's a very powerful piece of information. It's if it's set up well, which it sounds like it is, it's probably the most powerful piece of information. The biggest decision you probably have to make as a manager then is expected minutes. If you know that over a course of 10 game weeks, you expect these players to get these points, therefore you just pick the one with the highest points. That's all based on minutes. So you can then make calls based on press conferences, based on your own tactical insights as to whether you think that'll happen. The biggest thing that we still have as humans is then that trying to interpret how tactics will work and how they will evolve. I guess the one thing an algorithm, at least at the moment, isn't going to be able to do is Leeds, for example, changing from our Bielsa to Jesse Marsch. You can, of course, try and model that with Jesse Marsch's previous results, similar teams, maybe Southampton, but we're probably still going to be better at that ourselves, trying to interpret it. Might not always be the case. I guess the argument I'm trying to make without saying it is that I think some people won't enjoy it because it maybe feels like it takes some of our human autonomy away, a bit of that sort of like, I want to log in on a Friday, look at some team news, make a transfer, not really bother about it. Obviously, an automation tool can help you with that. But it's only the same as when stats were introduced or started being widely used. We all used to just watch Match of the Day or watch a match and make transfers based on, our thoughts on watching the match. Then stats were introduced and, you got the old eye test versus stats thing, which I think is a misnomer, by the way. Like, watching a match and reading stats are the same thing. You're just talking a different language. You're both trying to describe a football match. You're just using different words to do it. Stats help us with a load of things that the eye test doesn't, and the eye test can help us with things that stats don't. But both of them are trying to interpret a football match. And I think this is just the next evolution of that. And ultimately, I think it's a good thing. It's a thing to be embraced. And, you see FPL Review isn't using it. Fantasy Football Scout have the Rate My Team selector and whatnot. So it's not like it's unavailable to people. You can take it with as much of a pinch of salt as you want. And I'm here for it. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, similar to you, actually. I think I recognize the elements where human autonomy will still rule. And deadline streams is a great example of that. Late team news, players being ruled out for whatever reason, the algorithm is not going to be able to respond to that in time. But like you, I see the benefits. For example, the transfers that I've made this game week, the -8 that I took, I put it through the Fantasy Football Scout Rate My Team tool to see what the points projection would be for this game week and for the game weeks to come. So I did take a -8, and the Fantasy Football Scout projection tool said that my team after the transfers was going to be 10.5 points better off. Take the -8 out of it, it's 2.5. So the question is, well, is it really worth it? And you have to kind of put a few more questions in there as well. It's a lot more nuanced than just that. But it is a helpful way to check yourself before you wreck yourself, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's it, right? It's a really good sanity checking tool where either instinctively or based on your own research, you might think transfer A is the correct move. But what if I tried some other things? It's just a sanity check against what you're going to do. And it can help quantify it as well. So one of the things that we really struggle with as humans is thinking probabilistically. We think, and FPL is so bad for this. We think in outcomes. We think binary. It either did or didn't work. Captain Reece James was a good or bad decision. Well, that's not true. It had a probability of working or not. And that wasn't 50-50. It was, 70-30 in whichever direction, which means if you did it 10 times, you would get 10, well, not 10 different results, but maybe, 7 in one way, 3 in the other. So you assign a 70% chance to one outcome happening. Therefore, that feels like a good risk to take. So you take it. Our brains don't work like that. We need outcomes. We need to actually go yes or no. Algorithms do work like that. And you just said, 2.5 points. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to end up 2.5 points up, obviously, because you can't get half a point. What it means that if you did this 100 times, the average expected result would be 2.5 points. So you can then decide, is that worth it? With my risk appetite, with the other things I'm thinking in FPL, is 2.5 points enough of a risk and reward for me to make that decision?
Exactly right. Yeah. Well summed up. I liked hearing that. That was really interesting. The Liverpool team has been revealed. So the team news, I mean, we do care about Brighton as well. So we'll have a look at Brighton. We don't want to forget them, as we'll get upset. But the Liverpool starting 11, no surprises. We've got Alisson in goals, Trent, Matip, Van Dijk and Robertson. So the expected back four. Robertson starts. You can breathe a sigh of relief. We've got Fabinho with Henderson and Keita either side. And then Mane, Diaz, and Salah up front. So that means that Kelleher, Thiago, Milner, Firmino, Gomez, Jones, Jota, Tsimikas, and Elliott on the bench. So Jota and Firmino probably the two biggest names, and Thiago on the bench there. What are your thoughts on the Liverpool lineup?
That's pretty much as expected, right? I would argue that his first choice, give or take, I know there's some rotation in the middle often, maybe means that Jota will get a look in against Arsenal. Mane, Salah, Diaz is probably their best front three at the moment based on form. But then they didn't play that in the week against Inter. Jota started. I know Firmino's back. Against Arsenal, I wonder if Diogo Jota is the better choice tactically. Again, there'll be other things going on in Klopp's mind. So, what do I know? But I think he probably works best against their defence, especially given the slight aerial weakness. And while Jota is tiny, he is pretty good in the air. So I wonder if I would pick him up front if I was Klopp. But I wouldn't be surprised to see the same team again, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not the right time to introduce Firmino. A fully fit Firmino, I'd probably pick against Arsenal, but maybe not now.
Yeah, I agree. I think Firmino needs minutes. I don't see him starting that game against Arsenal. As an Australian, we know that you don't need to be too tall to be good in the air. Timmy Cahill, if you can cast your mind back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's timing, isn't it? How often... Yeah. Okay, as a centre-back, of course, height and aerial prowess helps because you're going up against, one-on-one defenders, especially at set pieces. But when it's an open play, what's often the better way of scoring, from a cross? It's not about beating a big guy in the air. It's about finding a pocket of space and being unchallenged, right? And that's what Cahill, along with a great leap, of course, but that's what Cahill was great at. And I think that's what Jota is great at.
Yeah, agreed. And then the Brighton lineup, we've got Sanchez in goals, Lamptey, Cucurella, Dunk, Basuma, Morpay starts, McAllister, Trossard starts as well, Alzate, Solly March, and then Veltman gets the start. So we've got Steele, McGill, Mwepu, Gross, Lallana, Moda, Welbeck, Duffy, and Leonard on the bench. So a fairly, I guess, the Brighton team that we would have predicted, I think, starting today. Any thoughts on the Brighton lineup?
Yeah, I think as you say, that's probably as predicted. Brighton fans will know better than me. Maybe Neil Mope. I know some people. When I say some people, I mean Andy, just Andy. I think Andy has him still, so we'll be pleased with that. But yeah, I mean, from an FPL point of view, unfortunately, we're probably not interested in Brighton, right? We would, with all due respect, we would like them to roll over.
Yeah.
So if they could do us that favour and then be great in the future, that'd be lovely.
Do you see them rolling over? Before we go, what's your score prediction for this game?
Oh, I mean, they've been poor recently, haven't they? But I really, really like Graham Potter. Like in another universe, I would have him at Leeds. I know he wouldn't come to Leeds. I'm not saying he would, but I really, really enjoy him as a manager. I think Brighton, if you look at, what club they are historically, the budget they have available to them, I think they're extremely well run. I know they have a very, very strict model of how they're run, and that's served them well. I enjoy them a lot. We know that they're a darling of expected, savants. So that's always attractive. Not looking as good at the moment, but final third of the season, they'll be fine. They're not going to go up. They're not going to go for Europe or anything. It's probably a decent opportunity for them to finish mid-table, reset for next year. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think playing at home will be a big difference for Brighton. I still think Liverpool win this game, and I don't see Brighton scoring. I think it'll be fairly low scoring. I'm going to say Liverpool 2, Brighton 0.
Yeah, that seems fair. I would take that. I mean, I always dislike score predictions because they just seem quite random. But 2-0, sounds reasonable enough to me.
Yeah.
I will take a Salah brace with a Robertson assist, and I will be very, very happy.
Yeah, and you get your two
I will
clean
have
sheets.
fun, as we said earlier.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. That's fun.
Yeah.
This has been fun. Seb, thanks so much for joining me on the deadline stream. Thanks to everyone as well in the chat. Make sure you drop a like before you leave. All the best for Game Week 29. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video. All the best, everyone. Bye.